Good morning, friends. I have pretty big ears, just to be honest with you. Take a look. These are pretty big flappers. The problem was, when I was 4 or 5 years old, they were the same size. Yeah, can you imagine these ears on a 4 or a 5-year-old? And even though I have pretty big ears and I hear well, it doesn't always mean that I listen really well all the time. My kids are quick to tell me so. My little daughter will sometimes cup her hands on my cheeks and say, "Look, Papa, look at me, and listen to me." You ever been told that you just aren't listening? I sometimes find it difficult when you have lots of tasks around the office and a coworker wants to tell you something and your ear may be there, but you're not really taking in the information. Or when a child or your spouse or a student or whatever setting you might be in has something to say to you and you hear it, you have fine hearing, but you don't really listen. Hearing is easy, but listening takes time. Listening well requires patience and respect and humility. And all those things sometimes are difficult to put all together when we're listening to somebody, to do it well. But Jesus calls us to listen. Why? Jesus calls us to listen because listening is the way to love. When we really learn to listen well, we'll find the way to really love well. That's exactly what the Apostle Paul wrote to the believers in Ephesus. And in chapter 4, listen carefully when he writes this: "Therefore, I, the prisoner of the Lord, implore you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling with which you have been called, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, showing tolerance for one another in love." And later on in the same chapter, he says this in verse 29 of Ephesians 4, "Let no unwholesome word proceed from your mouth, but only such a word as is good for edification," that is, to strengthen, to build up, to encourage, "according to the need of the moment, so that it will give grace to those who hear." And the only way that you and I are going to be able to speak what is edifying, what is strengthening, what is encouraging in the need of the moment, so that it gives grace to those who hear what we have to say, the only way we're going to do that is by listening really well. Because when we take the time to really listen well, we'll begin to really know how to really love well. Years back, I was involved in some important meetings where very vital decisions needed to be made. It may have happened in a church building. And I remember with a large group of men, we'd have these long meetings. They were always in the evening, and we had these decisions before us, an agenda to take care of. And as the meetings waxed longer and longer, sometimes the conversation was not entirely Christ-like. Now, we know that never happens in Christian ministry and churches. We always speak with love, right? No. Now, we know sometimes we as followers of Jesus struggle to speak with love. That's why the Apostle Paul is writing to believers here in Ephesus saying, walk in a manner worthy of the calling of which you've been called, and walk in love and speak what is edifying. But remember, in that room where we met for these important meetings, there was a handcrafted piece of art that an elderly woman had made, and it said this: "Listening may be the most loving thing you do today." Catch that? Listening may be the most loving thing you do today. So as I sat in those meetings, which were important, and I was more of a spectator participant than anything else at that point, I just knew that I needed to be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger. As James wrote in chapter 1, verse 19. And that listening, really listening, not just letting the information come into my ear canal, but to sink into my heart, to really know what people were processing. That may be the most loving thing I would do. What about you? What are you struggling with when the tasks build up, when you have lots on your agenda, when difficulty comes, or when your kids barrage you with questions and they maybe put their hands on your cheeks and they say, Papa, listen to me. Mommy, listen to me. Or a coworker needs something and your mind is elsewhere. What are you facing today? As a follower of Jesus, we're called to listen well, because listening well is the way we'll really learn how to love well and thereby glorify Christ. Listening may be the most loving thing you do today, whether it's in the office or at home or out in the neighborhood. So I'm praying for you. Will you pray for me that I listen well? I struggle with it just like anybody else. As I care for my children, as I love my wife, as I'm involved in ministering to people, let's listen. Pray for me, I'll pray for you. God bless. Bye-bye.